What's good, people? Welcome to another edition of Politricked here on the Got What You Need Network. Of course, I'm your host, Sky. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's make sure that we support the entire network while I'm at it, and that means the Black Male Podcast, Talking with E, Life and Love, as well as Encourage and Inspire. And don't forget to support GWUN TV over on Roku, where we have Exposed and a bunch of other great content over there on Roku. So, yeah, man. But look, today, not a lot going on, but I think some very pertinent topics to discuss. We had an incident in New York with the migrants from Central America, and y'all know my conflicted feelings in regards to how this country is going about handling the migrant crisis. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Um, this horrible story out of Mississippi, and it's just disgusting, not from the point of just the story, but I pointed to the lack of outrage from citizens in that state, but they went viral for being upset at Deion Sanders, but they not burning down a police station over what I'm about to talk about in a minute. We'll get into that. And then I have another Keith Lee story. And this one, and actually I'll start the podcast with that. So everybody knows Keith Lee. He's this food critic, or food critic kind of internet, food reviewer, let's say, and he uses his influence to lift, smaller businesses, struggling businesses that he thinks has great food, great customer service, but maybe lacking marketing. All right. We've heard about the thing that happened in Atlanta, and I think you heard about what he said about what was going on. I think it was in some places in Detroit or whatever. But let's talk about North Dallas, Texas. Sweetly Seasoned is a food truck owned by Kim Viverette. So Keith Lee showed up, saw like there was a lot of good things going on. Obviously, he was contacted by the woman's son and I believe another young lady. And basically, and the son was like, "Yo, you should check out my mom's food truck. Um, she's not having a hard time marketing her business, but the food's great, so on and so forth." He shows up. He sees that there's a barber outside, away from the food truck. So it's not a thing about being sanitary or unsanitary. And he was giving out free haircuts. And there was, I think, one cashier that was working with the owner. So once Keith Lee was done, as he does all the time when he gets good service or great service and he enjoys the food, he usually leaves a very, very large tip. So in this case, he left $4,800 with clear instructions on what to do with the money. So he left $800 for the owner to give out free meals that he basically prepaid for $800 worth of meals. All right. Then there was $1,000 that was allotted to the barber for giving out free cuts. He probably didn't do $1,000 worth of cuts, but whatever. This is where this man wanted these funds to go. There was another $1,000 that he allotted for the cashier, and then the owner could keep the $2,000 for her. Later on, it was found out that the owner kept everything. And a relative of the cashier has been on the internet making it known that the woman, the owner, Kim, blocked the blessing that was meant for her cousin or it was a relative, the barber. Um, I was looking for different responses to see if the woman responded, and she literally responded with, I never asked him to come out there and cut hair, and I didn't ask her to help me. They volunteered, and they shouldn't deserve, and they don't deserve anything. And the son is going after the relative of the barber, saying that she's just clout chasing and whatever. And I'm like, how? Needless to say, the word of the negative press about this has basically caused the food truck to lose almost all its business. The lady had to relocate, and right now, the last time I heard that she was open, she could only afford to be open 3 hours, and then she had to close because business was so slow. Now, here's a situation that if you did the right thing, business would probably be booming just because of Keith Lee's cosign. But because you decided to be greedy and evil, your entire not only was like the blessing taken back, but your entire business is probably going to be destroyed just because you wouldn't do the right thing. And my whole thing is, man, very few food trucks make $500 in a day. So for her to basically just say she kept the 2,000 for her personal stuff, she had $800 that was basically prepaid for meals. Even if I would have been cool, and this the thing, she probably didn't even have $800 worth of food. So before she had even got to the $800, she probably would have ran out of food and had to close for like a good reason, and still would have had a few $100s left over. But instead decided to be greedy, and now nobody wants to support her or her business. And it's sad because this could have been something that could have it, the goodwill could have spread. Given that barber that stack, he may have said, I'll come back next weekend and I'll bring another barber. And he might have used some of that money to pay the other barber to be out there. And it's just so much that could have grown from that. Um, when people with means see other people giving, a lot of times they'll join in. And positive news about this would have spread. Well, could have spread. Can't say definite. And it could have led to a lot of other great things going on in the community. But instead, this woman not only blocked her blessing, but likely destroyed her business. Um, as of the time that we're talking, no, she hasn't done the right thing because she likely used that money to take care of personal stuff, um, in her life, and no longer has the money to give um, the people that she was supposed to. So it is what it is. Um, we've been discussing the migrant crisis for various episodes, and I've always talked about being caring and compassionate, but also talking about that there's a rule of law. Um, I was watching the news a couple of weeks ago, and there was a group of migrants, thousands of them marching through Mexico. And the guy that was coming was like, hey, we're not coming to start trouble. We're just looking for a better way. It's really bad back in our country and there's no opportunities. And I was looking at my wife and I said, see, and that's where him and anyone that thinks like him, whether they're on this side of the border or that side of the border, is wrong. You don't get to apply for political asylum because of a bad economic issue back in your country. Asylum is for like war-torn countries. You can't survive because of, political corruption that's going on and violence and things of that nature. None of those things was mentioned. It was just our country is poor and there aren't a lot of jobs. I heard it's popping in America, so we're coming here. All right, and I don't agree with that. And whoever think that I'm wrong about that, so be it. Um, as a matter of fact, I have this little thing I wanted to share, and I just Googled, and I said, can U.S. citizens go to Venezuela, because this is where this gentleman was from that made this statement. You must get a Venezuelan visa before traveling to Venezuela. Visas are not available upon arrival. Note, U.S. travelers risk lengthy or indefinite detention for attempts to arrive at any Venezuelan border without a valid Venezuelan visa. So you're telling me that myself and other taxpayers must take on thousands of illegal um, entries to this country, and then various cities around this country are supposed to strain themselves financially to house, feed, educate, and help these people find jobs when they come here illegally and don't go through the proper channels to do so. But yet, if me and my wife was like, well, hell, if everybody leaving Venezuela, let's go there. You telling me if I did the same thing, I could have a lengthy or indefinite jail stay for doing the same thing that they're doing to my country. All right. Now I bring this all up because in New York City, a group of migrants, as many as 14, got into a fight with the NYPD near Times Square. 6 were charged. 5, only 1 was held. 5 were released, and they believe 4 have left town. Now, there's no crime in leaving town. They weren't ordered not to leave town, but they do have a court date, and the legal process would start there if and when they don't come back for that court date. But what I want to talk about is they were fighting the police. So imagine being like the family of someone who was killed in regard, like because of a legal traffic stop, or Eric Garner's family. You know, what's the guy Udalu, who got shot 42 times because he pulled out his wallet, and then 4 cops all let up, basically emptied their clip into that man. But yeah, people who don't who didn't even come through the proper channels to enter this country are put in New York City and financial strain. Were out menacing, and the cops was breaking it up, telling them, "Yo, y'all got to move it along or whatever." And they got into a fight with the police. I think 2 of them had to have medical attention. Not one taser, 1 gunshot, no nothing. But people in this country should have an open mind. Oh, don't let a few bad apples, whatever. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that, because every time they put a mic in front of one of those migrants' face, it's almost like, why isn't this country doing more to help me? This one woman came out of her face and said, I'm so disappointed in America and the way America has treated me. And I'm like, you come to this country illegally with your family with no plan other than I'm going to go there and say that I don't want to live in my country. I'm seeking political asylum, whether that reason is valid or not. And then all of a sudden, the red carpet is supposed to be rolled out for you, while we got homeless, hungry people that are citizens who don't get the treatment of these migrants. But now I got to hear about migrants fighting with one of the most corrupt organizations in the world, and none of the people that fought the police were hurt. Only one was held, and I guess they're saying held on bail. I think 15,000 bail, because they deemed him to be the instigator of it all or whatever. But the rest of them were released with no bail, and once again they were fighting the police, and nothing, no show of force by the police or anything like that. Yeah, they're upset about the bail reform, and I've already talked about how, yes, bail reform in New York City and in other places is necessary. But for the proponents of bail reform to leave it to where people who have committed a violent act against law enforcement fall under a no bail release is just wild to me. And it really doesn't make any sense. And to me, the actual proponents of the law should be going back to the drawing board and revising it, and not waiting for the police union and prosecutors and the mayor and all of that all those kind of people to start criticizing it. It's like, why not have the forethought and take the initiative to say, yo, look, I'm all for bail reform, but we can't keep doing this. But instead, just saying, hey, it wasn't meant to be, it's administered this way, and sometimes, people fall through the gaps, and that can't be the excuse. Listen, I don't want people jumping subway turnstiles to be in Rikers. I don't think they even out. But I don't want people who commit violence against law enforcement, because if they're going to commit violence against law enforcement, they're committing violence against anyone. And if you're willing to commit violence against law enforcement in a country you not from, in a country you entered illegally, then what else would you be willing to do? You understand what I'm saying? Like, if if that's where it starts, where does it end? And you think about like Brittany Griner, and I understand it was Russia, but still, she served time in like prison in like, you know in one of like the roughest places in the world for weed oil, while she entered that country like with the proper documents. But yet people who enter the country illegally and commit violence against law enforcement are released, on like basically released with no bail on their own recognizance. And no one who was part of this sees anything wrong with it, man. So once again, um, I think the migrant situation has gone totally um, out of control, and it's fault on both proponents of immigration and those who are against it. Um, the stuff that Governor Abbott is doing down on the border with the barbed wire and the different things like that is like I've said many times in the past, is inhumane. That being said, that doesn't mean that people should be able to show up at American borders by the thousands every single day and enter illegally. Like we have border crossings, and if the wait is long, the wait is long, and people are trying to enter illegally to go around the system that's in place, and I don't think that that's right. Um, and sooner or later, what's going to happen is the United States is going to have to just start enforcing the law and basically saying, hey, if you enter, you're going to be arrested and you're going to be taken back across the border. And if you continue to do it, we're going to hold you in our jails longer and then send you back. And it's just going to be a situation where those who are traveling with children won't be able to afford to risk jail, not knowing where their kids and the rest of their family will be going. And I hate that this country is going to have to take such um, a hard stand, but I just feel like we're being left with no choice. Um, I saw a recording where a Chicago alderman was basically accusing them of coming to Chicago because they know that there are charity groups that'll give them up to $9,000, help them get driver's license, cars, car insurance, and they're taking part of that money and sending it back to Venezuela, telling other family members, all right, now you come on and you make the trip. And I'm like, how is that fair? You know. And once again, he got some of his constituents don't know where their next meal is coming from, staying in the shelter or staying on the street in some of the coldest, weather in all of the country in the winter. And yet, they're taking this city is taking on people that have entered the country illegally, and they're getting all of these funds that aren't readily available for actual citizens of Chicago and Illinois. And once again, I'll step in and stop that man when he starts saying something that's wrong. Because right now, um, no matter how mean it might sound to all of you proponents of any kind of immigration or whatever, it's wrong. And it's non-sustainable in these various cities without substantial help from the federal government, and none of that has come as of yet. All right, last topic of the day, we're going to talk about Mississippi. Unfortunately, again, 215 bodies were found buried in an unmarked grave behind a prison in Jackson, Mississippi. All right. They're called pauper graves, in which each body corpse has a metal rod with a number attached to it, so that they can identify if needed. None of the families of these deceased were ever notified. And it wasn't until Betterson Wade filed a missing persons report for her son. And she filed it back in March of 2023. It wasn't until of August of 2023 that she found out her son was killed by a police car, and then it was covered up, and then he was just thrown into that mass grave with the rest of those corpses. So between March and August, this woman was misled, this woman was lied to, and the whole time, not only was her son dead, law enforcement killed her son, and they knew where her son's body was at, and just basically just lied and continually lied to her. Now, besides all the messed up stuff that's wrong with this story, I go back to when Coach Prime left Jackson State. And I remember all of these viral videos you know, of the last game they played and how people were booing and playing stupid songs, hit the road jack, and people going up to, I think it was like a mural or something, defacing it or whatever. And then it's things like this. It's things what went on with was it Brett Favre and the whole welfare thing. And you think about this in Minnesota, and rest in peace George Floyd, because I have to use you as an example. Here's a gentleman that wasn't even from the state or the city into which he lived, and was killed by the police. And the citizens of that area said enough is enough and burned the police station down on TV and for the whole world to see. Yet you got news that 215, and you know they majority black people, were illegally buried behind a Jackson jail. And we know at least one wasn't even locked up, was basically thrown there as part of a cover-up, hoping that it would never come up, hoping that the family wouldn't be looking for this man or whatever. And it might be some small local groups down there making some noise or whatever, but it was nothing like the nonsense that went on for weeks over a football coach that helped put your university and your city on the map, brought millions and millions of dollars there, and all the while the school was robbing him every home game of money that he earned. All while his kids' cars was being broken into, his office being broken into by the same people he was helping. But here you have a situation where over 200 people were illegally buried, and at least one was killed and illegally buried, and part of a cover up. And once again, no outrage, no major protests, nothing. No gang members doing anything in revenge. And I'm not an advocate of violence or whatever, but man, it could be somebody that's not part of no gang, not part of that life. He bump into the wrong person or whatever, and don't immediately get on his knees and say, "I'm so sorry, sir," or whatever. He might not even make it through that day. But then we got these folks that people claim, "Oh, I don't mess with them, and I hate them, and da 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 da." And I wish I did live back in that day when all that stuff. I couldn't live back in that day because they wouldn't be able to do this to me and do that bullshit, yo. You'd have been right out in the field with the rest of them. And the lack of action that go on right now tell me that ain't no way, ain't no way, ain't no way. I'm in a city, and like my relative, and I know my relative was killed or something, but then didn't even tell my family, didn't say nothing to any of us or whatever, and we got to find out this way. And you think that all we doing is calling the great Ben Crump to start the legal process? Oh hell no! Something else got to happen. Like the people involved, like the heads up, something gotta happen to their property, to their families, or whatever. But not in Mississippi. But let some black city slicker come down there or whatever and see the kind of reaction you get. But you know, you could basically create a mass grave and or just take money from poor people and then have the rest of the country wondering why this state that's getting the most federal funds can't seem to get it together, and the whole time they're being held down because the monies and the funds aren't being properly distributed. You find this out and you still don't do nothing. Brett Favre still a free man. You know, like I don't hear nobody harassing the daughter. The daughter, you know, it was for the daughter's school just because she played volleyball or whatever. Like that had been a black girl. She did way more to harm people than that girl Carly did in Alabama. And the girl Carly's a sucker. But Brett Favre's daughter did way more harm. And you say, oh, she had everything to do with it. He didn't just decide to get this money for this um volleyball stadium or whatever, arena, whatever, without her urging. This wasn't something to where, oh, I didn't even know my pops was going to do this. No, this was, hey, your dad's famous, whatever, whatever. We need a new facility. Can he help out? And instead of doing it the right way, he stole money to do it, and everything good. But once again, let it have been somebody with some melanin or whatever. Oh, y'all ready to show the hell out, you know? So yeah, man, we gonna stay on top of all of these stories because I think they all gonna have follow up and additional layers to them in the future. But that is my time for today. Appreciate y'all rocking out with me. Don't forget, man, we got Life and Love, we got Talking with E, we got the Black Male Podcast, we got Encourage and Inspire, and you're now tuned in to Politricked with your boy Sky here on the Got What You Need Network. Peace.